Are they on the air?
I feel a surge of energy in the room.
And we're live.
All right, at 7 o'clock, I will open tonight's meeting and ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. I would ask if there's any public comment from the board tonight. Nope. Okay. Per policy, speakers of the public during public comment will be asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per speaker, except at the discretion of the chairperson. With that, do we have any public comment from the public?
Sure.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, it's kind of sudden. Divine a better way.
I'm Greg Burns, 13 Oak Ave.
Shanita Casaro, 13 Oak Ave.
I'm here, I sit on AgCom, the Agricultural Commission, and part of the farmers market, and she is.
The farmers market manager for this year.
And we just wanted to thank everybody in the community and you guys for coming up and making it a great market. It was so nice to see the town come together. I mean, it was unbelievable, the numbers of people that were coming up there every Sunday. And you guys on the board, we saw you all the time. It was nice, and just people were coming up, enjoying it.
Yeah,
And,
everyone was super thankful and, appreciative that everyone came to the market this year, completely different from last year. And thank you for your support, especially for the agricultural community and the farmers community that we have in this town.
Be ready for next year.
I'll take the opportunity to thank you all, both of you and all the people who worked with you putting it on. It was an incredible difference in energy level, in attendance, in variety of items, and just general spirit, excuse me, than previous years. Not saying previous years weren't good, but this really built on those. So I know I was there we were talking before the meeting, probably about half of them, because other half because it's on Sunday, I was away, but it really was, people would come up to me and say how different it was, and all the variety of people from all over the region, not just Lunenburg, which was also a nice addition. So good luck. First of all, rest. Then good luck putting it all together again next year.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
I would follow up too and
Yeah.
say, if I made like a slogan or something, I'd say it was more than a market.
Yeah.
Like, every time I went there, I actually would bump into my own family there, every single time I went, some member of it, but it was really a lovely thing to do on Sundays, so thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you
And
so
if you
much.
use the tagline, please give credit. I like
See
it.
your family.
It's more than a
More than a
market.
It's more than a market. I like
More
that.
than a market. Good t-shirts.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks, guys.
Any other public comment?
I'll sit here.
No, please don't be here. Yes. Thanks.
Okay. Maybe walk over here.
It's part of our new exercise program.
Hello. Good evening. Ron Dion, White Street. Okay, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. First of all, thank you very much for passing that issue last week with the $11,000. I know it wasn't complete, but that's okay. At least we got something, you guys got something accomplished. We did get something accomplished. Now we just have to wait to see how long it's going to take to get it done. Okay? All right. Second of all, this is from Mrs. Adams over there. You had a question last week about the water standing in the bottom of the school. It's called water table. And every place that has a water table problem usually has a pump. Well, the school's got 2 pumps, right? Because that got approved last week, 2 pumps. There's a reason why the pump. So evidently one pump must have been out then where the water came up on the one side and the other one couldn't take care of the both at the same time. So that's going to be a reoccurrence all the time. So the pumps are there for a reason, and it's to save the basement. And thank goodness that the basement has got cement concrete floors. because it's not gonna erode anything down there. Because water doesn't erode that kind of, it has to be drawn, we're not gonna get into that, out of the downspout. Third of all, okay, I left a little note for, or a little clipping with Elaine I think it was the beginning of this week, or the end of last week, in reference to MSBA, got a major increase just lately, and they got approved by Senator Tran and all the senators. All right, they get like $200 million more for MSBA. But also it indicated in there that they're gonna put some money out to rehab some older schools. So I started making contact today. I didn't get a reply yet, but I got a call into Boston, so I'm just waiting for that call to come back to see exactly how that procedure works. You know, because if they can allow some money for the school, old schools, to get rehabbed without any percentage combined with this town, I'm gonna put in for it somehow. Or maybe I'll suggest it to the town manager to do it if that's the way it's gotta work, and put a request in for it and get some free money to do some more work at the school. Okay?
Excellent.
That way it doesn't cost the town anything. Or, in labor, if they wanted something done, ask me. I'll go do it for nothing. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment from the public? Okay. Announcements, few announcements today. First, upcoming events. So, next Tuesday at the Middle School, High School Auditorium, October 29th, 6:30 to 8 p.m., there will be an informational symposium on the state of the town. The participating committees will be the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the School Committee, and there will be presentations from Adam Burney, who's the Land Use Director, Dr. Kathleen Burnham, the Superintendent of Schools, and our own Town Manager, Heather Lemieux. Following the presentations, members of the participating committees will have a Q&A session with the speakers, and then there will be a Q&A session that will be open to the public. This is an information session only. No business will be discussed, nor deliberations or public comment held. There will be the Q&A part. That's the only public comment area. The purpose is to provide, quote, food for thought for later meetings of or between the town committees. So again, we encourage people to come and listen to those three presentations about the state of the town next Tuesday, October 29th, 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the Lunenburg Middle High School Auditorium. This Saturday at the Boys and Girls Club, they have their annual Shrieks and Creeks Halloween Festival. That will be held at the Boys and Girls Club from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. for those interested. There is an entrance fee. I don't know what it is for adults and students, but and they will have, I think, some food trucks participating. So it should be, again, it's been a very successful fundraiser for them in the past. Talking about Halloween, the town's trick-or-treating hours in Lunenburg for Halloween are on Halloween itself, October 31st, from 6 to 8 p.m. We also have a Back Where We Started program that's going to be honoring veterans, put on by the Salvation Army of Fitchburg. It's going to be held at the Devens Common Center at 31 Andrews Parkway, Devens, Massachusetts. It is a free dinner program celebrating veterans, their families, and their communities. Anybody is invited to we are welcoming all veterans and veterans' families. The doors open at 5 p.m. The dinner and program are from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And if you are interested in attending, please RSVP by November 2nd to www.salvationarmyma.org/Fitchburg Veterans. Lastly, I want to congratulate everyone on Sunday for another successful Miles for Miles program. And the Farmers Market, who we just heard from their coordinators, was there as well. That has been many years of a very successful fundraiser and also an awareness program against drunk driving. So I'm sorry to see that they have decided this would be the last one. I know it takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort to put it on, a lot of volunteers. I don't know if somebody will decide somewhere in the course of the year to pick it up or not, but it has been a great run. I've been able to attend many of them, not all of them, and it really is for a good cause and for making the best of what was a tragic accident many, many years ago. So thanks for everybody. I know the chief was very integral involved in that, and the police department and the school department in putting it on. So thank you all, and congratulations on a successful, hopefully not, but maybe last event of the Miles for Miles.
And Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes.
Just a historical nuance on the Miles for Miles. Wasn't a drunk driving, it goes by no need for speed. So it was a speed-related accident, not that they aren't both tragic, but just for the sake of the history behind that one. You'll see little signs in town that say no need for speed, and that comes out of the accident with Miles.
And I appreciate the correction, yes, that is what was the trigger for that, so thank you. And that allowed me a chance to see that I had one more announcement for the Lunenburg Community Blood Drive at St. Boniface Church on Saturday, November 2nd, 2019, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. It will be held at the Church Hall at St. Boniface, 817 Mass Ave. Again, a big life-saving event, donating blood, so if you can and want to, please attend there. You can call and make an appointment via 1-800-RED Cross, which is 1-800-733-2767.
And Mr. Chair, if I can say one more thing about the weekend.
Yes.
It was also homecoming the day before Miles for Miles, and since I've had kids, I've often gone to it, and it's just neat to see all of the, there's a lot of town employees, fire department, police department, and a lot of participation and cooperation in the parade. And I noticed at the end, the chief usually goes, he usually has his car, which is old, but he was in one of the shiny ones, and I kind of was like, hey, new wheels? He's like, no. But anyways, there was a lot of people. The school resource officer was driving with Hank, and so it's a nice parade, and there's a lot of people that participated in it just out of like volunteerism. So that was a nice day too.
I was at the corner of Lancaster and 2A as they made the turn, so it was another great event. Thank you.
Good weekend.
I only wrote down so many, so I apologize for anybody on. Thank you for remembering it. Okay, appointments. We don't have any, right?
None.
Interviews, appointments, reappointments, resignations.
None.
Town manager report.
Short report tonight.
All right.
Yeah.
You could just say present, I guess.
7:13, this is amazing.
Always like this part of the meeting.
Announcement of our existing vacancies on committees, 1 regular member and 3 alternate vacancies on the Agricultural Commission, which assists with the farmers market, so good intro to that. 1 vacancy on the Americans with Disabilities Act Commission, 1 design professional, craftsperson, or building contractor familiar with historic renovation for the Architectural Preservation District Commission, 1 position for the Finance Committee, 1 vacancy on the Open Space Committee, and 1 regular member and 2 associate vacancies on the Zoning Board of Appeals. And talent bank forms can be received on the website or through the Board of Selectmen's office.
I can interrupt just there to put a plug in, especially for not all of them are important, but the Finance Committee, if you're interested, this is the time to get involved because they are going to be gearing up for the budget season. Coming in February is a whole lot harder than it is now. So if you're interested in the Finance Committee, and I wholeheartedly recommend it, it's a very rewarding experience, having served on it myself. But this is the time to do it because you will learn the whole budgeting process from the ground up. You won't be coming in the middle of something, and that's really, really helpful. So you can actually come to the informational meeting next Tuesday and talk to people in the Finance Committee. That would even be better. So I hope to get that filled before budget season starts.
That would be great.
And they have a meeting this Thursday too, for anyone who's interested, another opportunity to talk to them. We received notification that our free cash was certified from Mass Department of Revenue on Friday, and it was certified at $1,107,694 as of July 1st, 2019. And so during the fiscal '21 budget development process, a recommendation for the use of free cash will be part of the budget process and what will be recommended at the annual town meeting. I received a letter today from the firefighters union requesting we begin negotiations for a new contract as the current agreement expires on June 30th, 2020. So we will need to schedule a future executive session to prepare for negotiations. The invitation for bids for the Eagle House HVAC project is currently being advertised, and bids are due on November 12th at 2 p.m. This project is being funded by a fiscal '20 state budget earmark. Upcoming meetings, events, and other announcements. Town Council has office hours tomorrow from noon to 4 p.m. I'll be attending the TC Passios Building Design Committee meeting tomorrow at 6, Personnel Committee meeting on Thursday at 5:30, and the Finance Committee meeting at 7 p.m. Thursday. And as the chairman announced earlier, trick-or-treat hours are Thursday, October 31st, 6 to 8 p.m.
Excellent. Current business, do we have any minutes, warrants, or?
No minutes.
No minutes, no warrants.
Oh, sorry. There's warrant up on the desk.
Okay. Okay. What is this voiding? This is voiding a school check because the employee resigned, so this is a voided check? Is that what this is? I'm assuming since it's a negative number. It's a negative number, so I think it,
We are cranking tonight.
it's great when you don't have agenda. Accounts payable, $574,101.80. Okay, action files. Everybody should have gotten the email from the town manager regarding both the 2A the 2A Route 13 intersection.
Yes.
At the light, and also about the line painting in the roads. That was sent this afternoon.
So, I mean,
Late
afternoon.
Yes.
as I understand it, Mr. Chair and Town Manager, it just hasn't been scheduled. Is that what it boils down to? Line painting?
It's, the vendor has been contacted to set up the work, but it hasn't been.
Yeah.
So the time frame is not exact right now, but based on their current schedule, it would be at least a few weeks out.
Do we have more
Where
paving
painting's done.
scheduled for next year?
Paving?
Yep.
Yes, I don't know I couldn't tell you
Yeah.
which roads.
Yeah.
So may I suggest that we at the time that we get the paving, that we also have a scheduled date for the lines to be painted?
I mean, there's a lot, we probably don't have any lines on all the paving that's been done during this project, right? So we probably haven't.
Yeah, I couldn't speak to it. I would hope that the DPW would speak to it and tell us what the process is.
Right.
So it's defined in the pavement management plan. So that if there's a curing time, and let's say that curing time is 6 months, that people will know that we're not gonna do this because it's got a cure for 6 months, and if you put lines on it, it's just gonna crack and everything. So it should be part of the process, just to let us know what that is, and let the citizens know.
Yeah. Thank you.
And what was the other email?
There is no update on the,
the
we have not
intersection
been
that-
contacted by the state.
And Mrs.
Okay.
Adams has asked about that light, and so we've,
And can you remind me, Selectman Adams, I mean, we all know that that's a dangerous intersection. I almost got hit the other day driving through it. But what is our goal? What are we trying to get them to do?
After the last most serious accident, I don't know if there's been others, there was, I think, 5 people transported. Some of them were young, and a mother contacted me and asked about it. I think the goal would be that when you're coming from Walmart and heading that direction, it's all directions, all green.
Yeah.
And why not maybe one side goes and then another, or add arrows, just improvements in traffic flow related to the cause of the last accident.
Got it. Kind of like when you're coming down the hill, how you have the left turn or right turn arrows. So that when you're
Yes.
coming across the intersection.
If you're on 2A, there's a lot more directional things that happen, but when you're coming from Walmart in Hannaford and crossing the street, it's more of a free-for-all, and why not add some green arrows or one side goes at a time type of thing?
Yeah.
And I think that's related to traffic studies and things, but because it's a state intersection, we can't fix it.
Yeah.
We just have to keep asking why it's not fixed, and then at least that's part of it, but eventually we should really ask why not. If it's a busy intersection and going in one direction has more safety included than the other direction, and if that's causing accidents, then I think it falls upon anybody who could be involved to fix it before, I just don't want it to be at the point where we fix it because something fatal happens and then we fix it.
Yeah.
And it seems like, wow, we knew that was bad, and so that's why I bring it up redundantly.
Even in parallel, being there in the corner, that's added a whole new dynamic to the issue.
complicated.
With not having I mean, I was going across the intersection the other day, someone came flying down that hill like 40 miles an hour and almost hit me in a truck, crossing an intersection, like, just not paying attention. So, I mean, I think that would make a huge difference.
And then somebody I was talking to pointed out, and you'll notice if you're leaving Walmart in Hannaford, that intersection is not directly crossing. It's
Yeah.
askew a little bit,
It
which
is.
makes turning in some of the angles even more complicated. So
Good point.
thank you for checking for updates and whatnot.
Thank you.
Okay, committee reports.
Stormwater Task Force is meeting this Thursday.
Okay. Old business, we have none. So we get to the workshop. And
Oh, I saw,
I see
not really a committee report, but I did see a tree beginning to be cut down.
I saw them out today
Yes, they
on
were out today.
Lemonster.
So,
one of the residents of Lancaster Avenue posted. So,
We're gonna discuss the planning board meeting.
We could.
Date now or later,
we can discuss it now.
or if the Barry, I don't know, talking
No,
about the
let's
meeting.
discuss it
Okay.
So, the reason why we asked to have a meeting with the planning board is because there was an uncertainty whether, given the fact that Unitil provided that tree work they wanted done, then we did the work with our tree warden and somebody that consulted with the town for the tree warden during that walk. And we identified and agreed on X number of trees, I don't have the exact number, of which the planning board approved 8 of them. So the question is, now that there were trees that were identified to be removed, that the tree warden and our consultant agreed should be removed, but the planning board...
Because of the health of the tree, not for anything else.
Well, presumably for the health of the tree. I don't want to put words in people's mouth, but they agreed that they should be removed. And the planning board chose not to remove some of those. We want to make sure that they are aware that there may be a liability for the town that someone has addressed, and we have acknowledged that there are trees that are at risk. And that if something happens in a public way, and there is property and/or personal damage, that the town may be held liable because we were warned of that. Not only were we warned of that, but we agreed that those trees were
Should be removed.
potentially dangerous. So that is what we want to make sure that they are aware of. We are not, they're their own elected body. We have no ability nor desire to supersede them. I want to make sure that they're aware of this.
Yeah. Can we send that to them in a letter?
I was gonna ask the same thing, where there's,
I think one-on-one is a much better way to discuss this. I think a letter I don't think it will get, to communicate it appropriately.
So
It's not like we're trying to tell the planning board, you have to change your decision. It's, we want to make them aware, and not circumvent the process. There's Mass General Law that we're following. But
I was at the planning board meeting the night they chose the 8 trees. I don't know if it was like a continuation of the Unitil public hearing or whatnot, but it was after our walk with the tree warden, and all that information was available, and Unitil had all that information into graphs and charts and presented, they compiled everything. The way the 8 trees rose to the top was Unitil had sort of charted and coded everything, and they designated 8 trees as the most dangerous, and they categorized it into different layers of need. And so where they chose to go along with removing the most dangerous phase of trees, and that's how it went from whatever the number was, maybe 13 or something like that, down to the 8. I feel like they had the information. I feel like this part of the decision was in their jurisdiction based on the scenic roadways. So I'm more with Michael in terms of a letter just communicating that they understand or they see what our thought process is. It's a lot to keep going to meetings without a clear understanding of what we plan to accomplish. They were aware of all the information we had. Some of them attended that walk. I know, was it 2 members?
Two members
were on
did.
the walk. They were able to communicate anything that they thought, or they could articulate things from the walk. It was all in paperwork from Unitil, and they did highlight 8 trees as red, and I forget the designation, but it was the most harmful. And they said, well, in support of being safe and getting something accomplished, let's do the 8 trees we know are the worst. I think that's logical, and that was their decision, so I don't really support going and, I mean, I'm not even sure what I would have removed at all. And I think the 8 designated as dangerous made sense to me, but I don't really feel that I would want to even, at this point, necessarily encourage the removal of more until we see the aftermath of everything we've already given permission for.
Yeah.
I would like to understand what the town's liability is in not removing those 5 trees that were indicated, maybe not the most highly dangerous, but dangerous and sickly and should be removed. Because I remember that the tree warden and the consultant were very careful to say that this tree's healthy, there's no reason to take it down. And they only agreed to take trees down that were unhealthy, as I recall. Mm-hmm. So I would like to understand from town council what the town's liability is, because I don't want to put the town at risk.
Can we communicate with town council via our own meeting and get a better understanding of that before we go to somebody else's meeting?
If I can just say, I communicated with town council, and that's why I brought it to the board's attention in the last meeting and suggested that you meet with planning board, because
What was his response?
That we would be liable if there were something to happen.
Well, then can we just, I mean, the planning board went through their process, and I think that there's 2 concerns that I have. The first is the appearance of strong-arming another elected body, which I know that that's not the intention, but I think that it very well can appear to be that way. And then the second part of it is, I mean, as I recall the joint meeting with the planning board, and I remember Paula Bertram and Greg Bittner both raising the question about liability over and over and over again, and that was something that I think was on their radar. So I would propose that we would just forward them the information that we have from town council and let them, do something with that or not. Are you saying that you're not comfortable with the liability? I mean, that's a separate act.
To be very honest, I did not play on YouTube the meeting that planning board voted on, so I don't know what they discussed and how they discussed it, or if liability came up.
Okay.
If liability came up in that, then, and they said, yeah, we know from town council that we're liable and we're still not gonna take down the trees, then that's a moot point. Did they say that?
No, I don't, no.
Okay.
And, well, I think in terms of liability, if something actually went into litigation, I think I would argue in defense of maybe preserving some of the trees, that Unitil's intent with the storm resiliency program was to remove all trees. And so my feeling on the walk was everything was condemned. 1 tree had a mushroom growing on it. And so I feel that I mean, that's real. He pointed out a mushroom. He said that could be a disease, and I'm just thinking, humans have fungal infections. Do we kill? No. And so I would argue that a couple things. One would be, there's liability in everything the town does. We have lead water in the TCP. Kids go to school there. We're probably liable for something if something went wrong there, but we also carry insurance. I've been asking about the lead water in TCP for a long time. If we find out a kid has a high level of lead water and they go to extended day, are we liable? Probably.
Is there any chance we could stick to the point?
This is the point. Lead water is more dangerous than a tree.
We're talking about the trees right now.
My point is liability. That's what we're talking about, is liability. And we're liable, I mean, could a healthy tree fall in a storm that's owned by the town and damage something? Yes. And so liability becomes something that you could split hairs and we're liable for everything. Somebody could slip on their way out of here tonight.
That's,
And-
yeah, but,
No, so I'm
yeah.
just feeling like Unitil condemned the trees. And now we're saying, I mean, it's like, it's never ending until they win, because they decided they didn't
they're
want
not
our
bringing this
trees.
up, by the way. Unitil is not pressing this point. Unitil couldn't care less whether we took out these trees.
That's not true.
No, that
They've
is
started
true.
the process
That-
of tree removal.
Yeah, but they're not fighting, excuse me for one second, they're not fighting this, so don't bring, Unitil is not behind our decision to request the meeting with the planning board.
What I'm talking about, though, is that we weren't talking about removing trees until Unitil came to start removing them. They were the impetus for the entire thing,
Yes, and do you know why we agreed to remove them?
because they pay for it.
Right. So it's not like we didn't think they should be removed, some of them.
But I also like
But that's what
trees,
the
I
tree
want to make
warden
sure
said.
we're not over-condemning.
I understand
the
that, but that's why we
vegetation.
had the tree warden and the consultant go over it for the town. That's all we're saying. And as far as your analogies about people slipping and healthy trees getting hit by lightning and falling, those are not things anybody could have foreseen. Those are things that are very defensible in court. If somebody says, I told you there was a bad tree, your own tree warden said there was a bad tree, their consultant said there was a bad tree, you didn't do anything, it fell down and hurt somebody, that's a whole different level of liability than a healthy tree getting hit by lightning and hurting somebody.
And a
And I-
lot less indefensible in court. So, and that was town council's point. Now that these trees have been identified, not only by Unitil, but the town has agreed on certain trees, that they were hazardous trees, that would make any future liability greater if someone were harmed.
But we have a
with that.
process that gives the planning board the authority.
No one's trying to circumvent the process.
We are, though.
No,
This is
no, we're
the-
not.
But I
That
think
information
that-
wasn't known to them
But-
at that meeting. It became known after their decision. So for them
We need
to.
to defend the town, so we need
certainly
to
do.
make sure that the planning board understands that the town has great liability should something happen to one of the diseased trees that were identified, that they should be taken down. We're not talking about healthy trees, we're talking about diseased trees that the town has identified
I
as
understand.
being a liability. So we want to make sure that we convey to the planning board that they are putting the town at great risk
Sort
by
of-
not removing the trees.
A point of order that this isn't on our agenda, we're setting up a meeting date, so we should probably rein in the conversation about the topic.
Definitely agree with that.
And I would say, based on the meeting, I don't understand why a letter and information can't be relayed to them from the town manager or from the town manager to Adam in regards to this liability and put it back into their jurisdiction, showing up as a board. I mean, we haven't voted to get rid of those 5 trees. I think we did the 8. And so we should clean up our own part of that puzzle and
We
then.
could-
We-
They were not in our jurisdiction to touch those.
No, but I mean, we'd have to vote for them to go too.
Right.
I think that.
No, we wouldn't, by the way, I don't think.
But I think that
We would have to disagree, I guess. We would have the right to disagree if they chose.
Have we voted to give permission beyond the 8? Because I think the
No.
motion was to remove
No,
the
I
8.
said
So
we'd have
we
to
would have to
revisit
make
it
a
too.
motion to remove those 5 for the, they had the scenic road and then we have the Shade Tree Act. And so we haven't even acted on that for the 5 trees. That's our responsibility.
I think that the path forward, my thoughts are that the path forward here is to provide a letter to the planning board and make them aware that there's a letter from town council that gives legal advice on the status of these remaining trees that have been identified. And then let them make a decision on if they want to do anything with that. Now, if in the event that they don't want to act on that, I think that we cannot ignore the liability, the potential liability here. And then I think that, as Ms. Adams is suggesting, that we have to discuss then, as a board, if we want to make a formal request to the planning board to get these 5 trees removed, and then go through that process with them, if that makes sense.
No.
So I guess
So
when
you don't want to have a meeting with the planning board, because you don't want to seem like you're strong-arming them, but if you don't like their answer, you want to have a
No,
meeting
no.
with the planning board requesting they remove the
I'm
5.
I'm saying-
I'm paraphrasing what you just said.
Yes, all right, then I'll clarify. I'm suggesting, the first part of that's correct. The second part of that is that we have as a board, as 5 members, because I already know what my thoughts are on this, but we as a board would then have to make a formal recommendation to the planning board to consider removing those trees. And that would have to be the majority of the board. I don't think that 2 of us would be in the majority over here, so, I think that it's probably gonna be a 3-2 vote.
Well, all the intent was, from the town manager, and I concur with the intent, is to set up a meeting so that you don't have to come to the meeting if you don't want, that's perfectly fine. We can post it, I just want them to take up the issue in a public way, so that it's not just a letter that nobody sees. I want the public to know that town council raised the issue of liability with us. We corresponded and asked for a public addressing of an agenda item with the planning board to discuss it. The vote is theirs. No one is denying the fact that the vote is theirs. But I want the public to know that we have this advice that we should be thinking about.
Why not have town council raise the question of liability with the board of whom they are questioning?
Because
I don't
they-
understand why it's
they
going
came-
through us.
Well, they came to us because the town manager had asked them about that, I'm assuming?
The tree warden brought it up.
The tree board, there you go.
But I mean, why aren't they communicating with the planning board, the other elected body of which they're hoping to communicate with? I don't
Was it
understand
sent
our
to the
role in
planning
it.
board?
What was,
The legal
What was-
advice. The legal advice.
there is no written legal advice.
Can we get a written?
I can request one.
Yes.
I don't know how
Yes.
long
if you
that will
can-
take.
Okay.
but-
Well, let's get that,
So-
and let's get it sent to the board, both boards.
I guess I would make a motion that we communicate with them through town council directly to them and not through us.
As the executive body, we'd want to know, well, but we can send it directly to them. I just said, send it to them and to us. Just copy both of us.
That's what you're saying. But I think that what you're saying is the same thing, is that we're gonna, instead of scheduling a meeting for now, that just give them the information. Is that what you're?
Sure. We'll send them the opinion, and once we get the written opinion, we'll send them a letter saying that we want to have an agenda item to discuss this. That for them to have an agenda item, doesn't have to be a joint meeting. We can come in individually as selectmen and ask questions. We're not going to vote on anything. We, the board, are not going to vote, so there's no need to necessarily post, but we probably would post just in case
Right,
anyway, so.
because we haven't voted
Right, and we're not
through the
gonna
Shade
vote at
Tree
that
Act to allow the removal of these 5 trees, which we would then also need to do. So we're asking them to do something that we haven't done yet.
meeting. No, well, the order is theirs first. We can't choose the trees. We only can approve what they did if they're public trees. We get authority over public trees, not shade trees. They get shade trees.
Meaning.
No, it's
scenic.
all public trees,
Scenic.
scenic
They
and
get scenic,
shade, but
right.
all only public.
Right, but they have to
They're
come
both-
from them first, so our vote is immaterial without their own. And I just want them to revisit it and just say that, yeah, we understand that what town council's concern is, and, yeah, we're fine with it, we're not gonna take another vote.
Okay.
I think, I understand what you're.
Again, I
trying
feel
to
like
do.
we're off agenda in terms of we're just planning a meeting.
So bottom line, I'm gonna tell the land use director, we're not gonna set up a meeting for Monday. Because we're
That's
not gonna have it. That's all I needed to know.
Deal. Plus, we've got our symposium, so.
All right. Workshop. Selectmen objective number 2. I'm not going to read the whole thing that's there, but basically it is in regards to, I'll just read the overall statement. To identify, define, and propose at least one project to the 2020 annual town meeting regarding the use and/or reuse of the old primary school building and/or the land on which it sits. So, first action in that item, as was defined in our goals, was to review the various paid studies that were performed that included that building, with special attention being paid to its structural analysis, potential suggested uses, and all applicable costs. And with that, those 2 documents, the Vertex and the TAPE study, are in our Google Drive. And I will open it up. I mean, basically, I want to talk about that and about they said potential suggested uses, not only in the studies, but our own, just listing, without going into the editorialization of why one is better than another, just to list what are the potential uses that we can potentially examine, at least. Casting a wide net, and at other meetings and workshops, we can kind of hone them down. So whoever wants to start. Wow, is this like the day that book reports were due or something?
No, I read both reports. I mean, I think I kind of am already ahead of this where, I think we know how I feel about these, not another penny. So, I mean, I don't think we should be spending any more money on the old primary school unless it's to demolish the building.
Okay, that's kind of editorializing. That's exactly what I said. So
That's not what you wanna
thank
do.
you for jumping right to the editorialization.
No.
I haven't said anything. That's,
Mr. Chair, I agree with Michael. I feel like casting a large net at this point is the opposite of the direction we're trying to head in, which I think is why you received silence, is because I think we're exhausted of casting the wide net, which will collect everybody's, widest desire and never meet the reasonable either budget or reasonable outcome for the property. And so I think this topic's been going on for years, and I would cast a tiny net and agree with Michael that I think this municipal building is no longer inhabitable. We have other ones with needs that are inhabitable, and so I just don't think the money's ever going to be voted to head in this direction, even if some people desired it. There's too many other places the town's money is needed.
But, when you look at Leominster and Fitchburg that have been able to rehab old elementary schools, high schools, how were they able to do that? Has anyone reached out to them to find out what they did and how they made it happen? The old high school in Leominster was abandoned for a really long time. And part of it was the neighbors were against doing anything with it, and they rose up every time a new plan came up. Now it's being taken care of. How'd they do it, Have we gone outside of Lunenburg to ask, how are other communities managing this? This is a problem all over the state. People, you could lease the primary school and the land it sits on for 50 years, 100 years, and not sell it, and get someone to come in and, make it affordable housing, senior housing. We definitely have those needs. We're not trying.
I beg to differ in terms of senior housing and different things. That's definitely being worked on town, not with this parcel, but there's an attempt, like with the new development, a certain percent of the houses up on Howard Street area have to be for seniors, a new
not
portion of a
senior
new
affordable
building.
housing.
But there's a new part of, is it Tri-Town is doing a build-out of another building for seniors, for affordable.
The town has nothing to do with that. Other people are.
But
taking it on
what, the big
themselves.
difference is that is a private project. The town can't create housing. It has to go to private. And I think what we've learned with this parcel, since it's gone through a land conveyance or land selling article 3 times since 2016, and it gets voted down, and people talk about preserving it as a municipal parcel. I think we have to look at that as a piece of it. I always say we're not just talking about the building, we're talking about the parcel. And in real estate, the real property is really the parcel, and then anything that's on it. So I don't just look at the building, I look at the parcel. I think it's a really great piece of municipal land in town center. And I think we have to always talk about it as a piece of land and not just as a building, in which case the only outcome for this building to be anything is if it becomes private property, in which case the developer will knock it down anyways, most likely.
No, you could lease it. You don't have to sell it. Many businesses
Yeah.
do their business with,
Lease was brought up at the last town meeting as part of the conveyance, and that was not well received. I just think.
But that wasn't what the article said. The article didn't say lease, the article said convey.
And/or lease? There's a big discussion about leasing at the town meeting that I do recall.
It's in the packet, as far as the wording of that article.
So they're going in,
Yeah, it discusses lease as well.
so this
And
this
a
building
huge
has only been on
conversation
twice?
broke out about leasing.
3 times.
Somebody was even trying to amend it to lease only, et cetera, and it got shot down.
So it's sale, lease, subdivision, transfer.
But it was any of the above, so
Right.
that the selectmen could convey. It wasn't like,
Some-
convey was in the article.
Somebody was amending it to lease only. They got up and made an amendment on the floor, and lease was discussed specifically, and that was voted down. The amendment to lease.
So page 58
Of?
of the, which study is?
Must be the Vertex.
Which
It's the only
one?
one that's 80-something pages long.
I don't have to close back, TAP A, actually.
Okay.
What page?
Page 50, PDF page 50, I'm trying to get the number here.
Oh, okay.
Written page 54, but I believe it's PDF page 58.
Of Taipei, you said?
Yes,
Okay.
Option 4?
yeah. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong building. I think
Oh,
I-
yeah, because that's past years.
Yep, I think I was above it then.
Option 1B, primary,
Yep.
town hall.
So option 1, which page was that?
1A with new construction,
34.
34.
renovation.
Oh, wait a minute, it's primary. Oh, that's it, right?
Yeah. No,
You're looking at option 1 for the
Yes.
primary is 50.
So I knew I was in the area. I was here scrolling up and down. All right.
PDF 50 or page 50 of the document?
PDF 50, right?
Getting there.
That's actual, yeah, this is,
Okay.
it says page 2.
Primary school renovation addition? Is that what you're on?
So I was, yeah, I was looking at, I think it's page 52. Option 1B and option 1A. So, I mean, to answer the question, Mr. Chair, I think that Selectman Luck mentioned senior housing. I think that another option for the school would then be town hall. I think both of these, right? You're asking for us for
Yeah.
for options?
Town hall.
And then also school site.
Yeah, because it's 2.5 acres, right?
Yep.
Did you say school site?
Yes.
Well, I don't,
School-wise, it's very difficult because of shared services. When they ran an off-site school there as the preschool and kindergarten, like, there was no administration there, and administration was run out of another building. School nursing's very difficult at a smaller location. I would love it as like a preschool or something, but now that they are using like extended day and off-site ways, it certainly isn't out of the realm of possibilities to run a portion of the school's business there, but I was,
After school.
yep, things like that. Also, in terms of my advocacy for it as a parcel of municipal land, years ago, it was thrown out as a town hall. Certainly, the aesthetics would meet the needs of having an attractive town hall. And they did look at it in the TAPE, like with us, if you did an addition off, if you're looking at it, if you did an addition to the right side, you could make an ADA compliant main entrance that immediately put you in touch with things like an elevator and whatnot. So it certainly is a possible town hall site with parking.
With plenty of parking.
And also the concept of having a park or a music venue outside of the danger triangle could happen because there's a good piece of land. It is. Makes me nervous. You could do band concerts and things on site of the property of our town hall, and it would be like a town green concept. So I think that is a thing to consider.
Just a note on the parking, we need to take into account the vote that was taken at town meeting regarding the Historical Society and the easement within that parking lot.
I think they would be very amenable to sharing parking with town hall
I'm just
and
pointing
band
it out
concerts.
as a consideration.
Thank you.
senior housing, town hall, a town green.
in terms of things like senior housing, what Heather just brought up is very important. The fact that there is an easement to somebody else. And the Historical Society is a private enterprise. The way that parcel could be used under that current easement could be restricted in terms of, I'm not sure how much land is in the easement and how far, close to the school that goes and stuff would change the way that building could be used, potentially.
I know that we're not, I remember when we came up with this list, I really pushed for the Ritter Building to be part of this, but I know we're not including that in the conversation, but I would like to just make a note that whatever future use comes of the Ritter Building, that they do not have adequate parking. And so if we do not now allocate or allot a certain amount of space for parking for the Ritter Building, then it's really gonna box us in with what we can do with the Ritter Building. So I would make a note about parking space on that parcel, just generally parking.
Another interesting dynamic for the parcel is it used to be talked about by building reuse and such as a contiguous parcel, all the Ritter you spoke of in the primary. Well, School Street has been very well designed now as a true public way because there's now a private residence on the end that wasn't there. So it used to be sort of a School Street to nowhere, or a School Street to this horrible abandoned building. Now it's actually a road to somebody's home and they have frontage on it. And so that road permanently disconnects those two parcels. They're no longer contiguous, but the land available for one building or another from a municipal point of view will complement the future use of the buildings.
Like I've been down to, what I'm thinking of is I've been down to Gibbet Hill in Groton. I think that's how you say it. Is it Gibbet or Gibbet, whatever it is.
I think it's Gibbet.
But nice place. But their parking lot is enormous, right? And you think about how much land that they had to allocate for that parking space. And I know that some ideas that were floated were turning Ritter into a restaurant. But if that were a realistic option, right, you'd have to have parking for it. Or really anything you do there, you need parking for it. But I think that's kind of just where my mind's going on this. So, great. Parking.
And focusing on that parcel as having a component of parking, when you look at like the farmers markets and everything, it's that lot's not in good condition. The way the island's there, if you reconfigured it, you could park more cars.
Yes,
but that place
definitely.
fills up with those markets.
It
and,
does.
The lack of parking for the Bad Larry's and for any future business increase for the pieces we already have in town, parking is something that comes up, and I see that spot as a good overflow parking lot, especially if we put in a crosswalk, put in some lighting, things like that.
Even just painted parking spaces, I mean, it's just, there's more room there than cars park because of the way it's configured, the way it's not configured.
Yep. Yeah, it's still got its bus loop kind of thing going on, and there's no buses looping.
No. Yeah, because there was a reasonable amount of space, even that roadway is really wide.
Yeah, and there's all the land where the old public safety was. I don't know who was here for that, but there was a whole fire police department there. There's more space there than you see if we fixed it up and utilized it. Even that space behind the Ritter where there's some parking spots.
Right, exactly.
If you redid that area, you could be parking there with probably twice as many cars.
Oh, I think at least.
Now, Mr. Chair, you're looking, the note in the action, it says "and applicable costs." So should we be assigning some rough costs to these things?
We could.
All right. The option 1B of a town hall renovation, that comes at a cost of roughly we'll round $7 million.
Option 1B.
1B, yep. And
That was in,
That includes a major renovation of this town hall.
Oh.
1B, the tape used to be one of my favorite things. I actually used to carry it in my purse when I was a public commenter back in the day. And so a lot of these things we're looking at, like multiple outcomes of different spaces. So if you see there, major renovation at town hall, that's this building coming in at $1,430,000 as a part of that.
so we can assume that cost would then go away.
If you look at major renovation of, I think option 1A is Oh, that's demolish existing building and do a new building. There's one where, okay, option 1, not A or B, that comes up right before it, the major renovation of Old Primary at $2,460,000 plus the new addition. That's that sort of having a piece to the right.
6.6.
Yeah, so 7 million, same, but in one of them you got the 2 separate buildings, and in another one you created a more singular location.
I think we can round up and say 6.7 million for town hall.
And this is 2015, so if you do that % increase inflation over time, you're probably dead on with your 7 million.
What is this option?
That's option 1.
I know which option it is, but is this to make it?
Town hall.
To make it a what?
A town hall, is how it's described.
Okay.
But I think we can also, use those numbers and kind of, and I know we're kind of roughing it here a little bit, but we can assume that senior housing, obviously would be put up to a developer, more than likely to do, but that there would be some cost on our end to even get it to that point. So how would we want to assume cost for senior housing, if that were to be an option? What would we assume the town would have to do if we were to go down that road?
I think we'd have to convey it, and I just don't think the heart's in doing that. I think in 2009, and this is sometimes, every once in a while, I have a I really miss Bob moment, because he was such a historian of these things, and in 2009 is when there was somebody highly motivated to develop that school into senior housing and going for grants and everything, and they were never able to secure all the grants, and it just didn't happen. I mean, that's,
Wasn't there a huge crisis?
Yeah,
Financial
the
crisis.
financial
right?
crisis of 2008.
Yeah, right.
No,
So it wasn't,
It wasn't financially viable at the time.
So it was all designed around HUD funds.
Yeah.
I was here at the time, and HUD, under Obama, that's when the financial crisis hit, all the money was siphoned out of HUD for this program, and John Jewell, who was the architect and the
Driving force?
yeah, he was the one who was doing this, submitted it 4 years in a row, and it scored well, but they just didn't have any funding for anything.
At the time, do you recall what the town needed to fork over, if anything?
Nothing.
Just convey it and then let the developer.
Right, we weren't gonna, what the town had to do was to make it more attractive to the federal government, was that we weren't gonna charge anything for the land.
Got it.
And probably we're gonna waive things like the sewer hookup and things like that. Because they wanted to know that the town was committed, not only just by donating the building and the land, but that we wouldn't charge extra fees. But that really wasn't the stumbling block.
But for legal fees, et cetera, can we just throw a number out there and say we're gonna spend at least $50,000?
We didn't spend anything for that, and nor, if we went in that line, nor do I foresee that we would have to.
Okay.
If somebody was attracted to it, but the problem is that,
It's not attractive.
no, the problem is that you have to convey it. I mean, the Board of Selectmen was allowed to enter into that. But in order to get third-party people, you need conveyance to be able to do it.
No, I fully get that. I think it's really difficult for a developer to step into any space with town land when it's dependent upon a town vote.
Well, they're just not going to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
traditionally, you could ask across the state, no one's going to respond to a request for proposal if the land hasn't already been, if the town hasn't already approved it, or the town council
Yeah.
hasn't already approved it. They're not going to put all the energy into it, hoping that it'll pass town meeting.
Of course, yeah, because it's a lot of money to engineer
Right,
plans.
a lot of investment of time and human resources to do it.
So, to turn it into a school site, I hope I'm not pushing this along.
It's an open discussion.
no, this seems to fit the agenda.
So
What do we do?
to turn this into a school site or after-school program, certainly, given our list of criteria of having buildings that are fully ADA compliant, that we would have to pursue some kind of option here that would include an addition to that building to then make it, and an elevator help it become.
Well, I think there'd be some obstacles first, and not obstacles, but some things you'd want to get agreed upon, and that is that the school would want it.
Yeah, Of course.
Right. You can't have an after-school program, you can't have a school because we want it to be a school. The school
of course.
department would have to want it to
Yeah.
be a school.
But for the sake of a discussion for monetary options, that, I mean, I think that we can assume that that the cost will be no less than the cost for the town hall. The schools have more requirements than town halls do. So I think we can assume $7 million.
It would be much
minimally,
higher,
and it
correct,
would
yeah.
at least be that much money, right? And that's a reasonable assumption.
In this day and age, too, you'd have to also look at the fact that you'd likely need potentially, depending upon what direction you're heading in, cafeteria and
Of course.
stuff, and that's
Yeah.
just not
Kitchens are
in that
really
building.
pricey.
Question for Heather with our public commenter about the MSBA and rehabbing older schools. Just out of curiosity, because I often mention that I feel like we need more school space, or we do. Any hope of renovating TCP as a school using these funds he spoke of? I mean, I know nothing of the topic and what he brought up, that there was new money released for rehabbing old schools, but we have an old school that we could rehab as
But
a
it may be-
school.
But the wording may be school that's currently used, you know.
Right.
Well, we are using it. The Lunenburg Public Schools are currently using it. I guess in the context of this conversation, if we were going to head towards using an old building for school expansion, the logic would be with the school on the campus.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
But-
I'm
but
not
again, we're
advocating for
talking
the
about
viability
something-
of any of these things.
We're talking about making it a school without asking the school. The school has said several times they don't want it.
Yeah,
Nor this.
yep.
They ran from
I
that.
think that I'm just trying to propose.
No, you're doing what the agenda says. You
Not
are.
that I'm.
Okay, so
You're viable.
I'm ready to propose an idea. The removal of the building and a municipal park. And the figures for that, I think, are approximately 250,000. When you look through TAPE, that includes the demolition and the hazardous removals. So for a bargain price of $250,000, the building would be gone, no future maintenance and utilities, no renovation costs, and then we could roll forward with a nice park. We could stop using the danger triangle, and I think it would be inexpensive, and then what would be left is site work, creating a park, and somehow I feel, given the nature of different things in town, that there could be some in-kind donation portion that we could build into a project like that. So I think we would be maxing out at $500,000
You can
town
also
money.
You can also seek grants.
There are a lot of parks, open space type grants, all the pocket parks that you're seeing, there's a lot out there for things like that.
And again, you sort of should probably talk to Park and Rec if you're going to propose a park.
Not necessarily, yeah, no, for sure, but I'm seeing it as like, do they run the gazebo triangle? No, I don't know. It's just a municipal common space, and so I'm not necessarily saying it to become a park, but
Oh, I thought you were.
to be a town common, which our current common isn't under parks.
Right, Commons wouldn't be under.
So the last option was parking. I mean, based on my own experience, I can throw an estimate out here of about $100,000. That's low, but that would just be to minimally just take what's there and just repave it, regrade a little bit.
But that doesn't get rid of, that doesn't discuss what to do with the building.
No.
Well, that's,
That's
this is
just-
about what to do with the
All
building.
right, then I would add that to the town green thing of, say, $600,000. If we were to
Well,
tear it
let's
all
go
down
with
and put it into a
350.
parking lot.
Let's, I mean, to tear it down and do a parking lot,
Yeah.
we might be more in a 350 range, very reasonably, because it's 250,000 for the hazardous waste and then the demo. And then with some parking money in there at 100,000, that would also probably get you some grass seed. Then you would have an open space. You could move farmer's market around the open space, there'd be tons of parking. I walk there all the time now just to get perspective, and when you're standing in that parking area, you see the Ritter, you see Town Hall, you see the church. It's really a lot more a part of Center than it feels like because we've ignored it all these years. But just to get myself used to it, I walk a loop there a lot, and it's right there in the heart of the center. Parking, common space would work. And it doesn't mean there can't be a future building there or another future use, but we just say goodbye to this piece that we just don't need.
I mean, with the site work that would be involved, I mean, there's a grade to that
Yeah, they'd have to be
land, where
regraded.
you're gonna have a big empty hole too.
engineer.
That you're gonna have to fill in and regrade that whole area, what level are you bringing it to? That means a lot more fill.
We're lucky to have a lot of companies in town that I think we could approach for in-kind that have that skill set. And so I think we would have to consider what the budget would be, but also be optimistic that I think a project like that would bring out some support.
But as a baseline, I think we can assume the cost would be at most $500,000.
At what point does prevailing wage kick in?
So if we put a project out to bid and the contractor, yeah, we have to go through that process. We have
But
to
if
pay
did-
prevailing
if we did the
wage.
bid- If we did the bid all internally and we didn't put it out to bid and we said we're gonna do it ourselves, that we wouldn't?
You mean in-house?
Yeah.
Our own staff?
Yeah.
No, you don't have to pay prevailing wage for your own staff. It's,
And
yeah.
if that happened, I'm just trying to find out. So if we did a thing and did it in-house,
Mm-hmm.
can we accept in-kind at that point?
Yes, donations of material.
Okay.
Would it be reasonable to approach people to see if they would support in-kind donations in this, just so we can build that as a piece of this option?
Well, you certainly would have to seek it if you were going to try to add it.
Yeah, knowing ahead of time if people would feel optimistic about that as a potential outcome, and just knowing how people feel about spending in terms of maintaining it as a municipal parcel. It'll always be the least expensive option to remove that building. Because anything you look at here from Tape Vertex, it'll put 1.8 million to get it back up and running, 2.4 million to renovate it as is. So we're really going into this many millions where we're talking just mere hundreds of thousands. And that's a joke.
It's a lot of money for a lot of people.
Yeah.
If I can.
Yes, please.
I think Selectman Luck brought up a good point about housing, though. I mean, our aging population is growing very fast, and we do not have enough housing. I think that has to be something we look, towards in the future.
With all due respect for this 2.5 acre parcel of municipal land, there's a lot of solutions to private development and senior housing, and conveyance has been, the town has said no to conveying 3 times. I wish we would stop, every time there's something heading in a municipal direction, something drags it back to a conveyance direction, and I think that's not going to get us anywhere through town meeting.
Did you realize that you interrupted her? She was in the middle.
No, I know,
She was in
but
mid-sentence. Could you let her finish?
with all due respect, it's a government, and the governmental legislative body is town meeting, and I'm trying to give respect to the 3 times they've come out and said no to conveying. This option that seems to come up, I don't understand why you attach it to this parcel, because there's so many parcels that could accept the development of senior housing. There's a huge parcel on 2A that could have a far larger outcome than this 2.5 acre parcel.
I looked back at my notes from that town meeting, that vote, it failed by 4 votes. That's how close that vote was in conveyance, because it required a 2/3 vote.
With all due respect,
So-
as an employee of the town, I don't know why you're advocating politically on this topic.
She's not advocating politically, she's bringing up a topic that was a big topic back when the primary school first became vacant. This lot is important because it's closed for seniors to the senior center, close to the library, close to a general store slash market that's there. And so, and we as a town, as a municipality, have the ability to promote it. Whereas we can't promote properties that are on 2A that we don't own.
It requires the conveyance of the land
You're
that we've
absolutely
said
right.
no
Well,
3
does it though? 'Cause,
times.
I mean, isn't it already within the town manager's power to lease town property? I mean, isn't that already within your ability?
Rent, yeah.
Yeah. and
Rent,
so-
not, I don't think long-term lease. Long-term lease would probably need town meeting, which is why
Yeah.
we've done that.
But I mean, I understand what I think we've agreed so far on everything so far tonight, which is rare, Selectmen Adams, but I think we tend to agree more than we disagree anyway. But on this one, I think that I have to disagree. I think that senior housing is an issue. When I talk to seniors, that's the one thing that comes up repetitiously. And a vote that failed, by 4 votes, and that means that 66% or 65% did support it.
Right.
And I wouldn't rule it out as an option. And I think that it is a perfect piece of land right near town center, right near town center, near businesses, near the library, near the senior center, near town hall, and that would be a perfect property for seniors to live at. and keep them in the community.
And when I went to a presentation out of state on, revitalizing town centers, they said, you've got to bring housing. You don't have a vibrant town center unless somebody lives there.
That's true.
And making that senior housing would be a boon to all of the businesses.
Of course it would.
Dragonfly Cafe, and people who live close by and would walk around and visit those shops. And it's not far from public safety, it's not far from the senior center. I think it's a perfect place for senior housing.
Again, for the purposes of this discussion, I think I don't want to rule anything out. And I certainly, and I've said this, I've cautioned against it before, I would certainly not venture to guess why town meeting votes any one way on things. That's not, all the times it was brought up for conveyance were under different circumstances. There was a lot, there were many articles at the time. They could have thought it was overabundance of conveyance. There could be a lot of things. I think that's why we want to focus on a piece and just discuss what the options are before we say, no, we shouldn't do that.
And I would just want to say, I'm not saying that senior housing isn't an important issue. I just feel like it's a private issue, and I feel my role here is more, what is Lunenburg Center, what is Lunenburg's future, what are our needs, like parking. Like, I think it's more important for us to advocate for the parking, for the health of the entire center, using land we have. That is a municipal role. In order for it to become housing, it is to become private land. I advocate to use that piece to enhance our municipal future. As we're close to 300 years old, we will also need municipal growth and expansion, just like housing needs growth and expansion. I don't think it's the time to convey property. And so I just encourage private property, private developers. I encourage us to be an attractive place to hope for that to happen. I just feel that we're heading towards that path of potentially asking for conveyance, and I'm just exhausted of that topic. I think we should listen that exactly like the chair said. 3 times conveyance was brought up with 3 different rationales, and all 3 times it was voted down. And I've just exhausted myself over the years going to every last charrette and every last piece, and even the one at the senior center. We went into workout groups and broke out, and a lot of them talked about the historical integrity of town center and liking town center. And even though, vibrant town center, that means something to everybody else. Based on my experience this weekend attending the parade and everything that happened with Miles for Miles, I think it is vibrant in the way I see us. And so, vibrant and walkable, that might suit other places, but I've walked all around, and I don't think it's not vibrant in the way I see my town. Conveying the parcel, I think, is setting us up for failure, and I just want to see something positive happen for that space. And if we listen to the data we have, which is that people say no to selling it, then if we focus on something like town hall, like parking, I think we're going to get somewhere. I don't think we're going to reach our goal if we head down conveyance path again. And that's my biggest concern, is that then we look for conveyance says no, and then we still just have a dilapidated building.
So I don't think they said no to selling it. I don't think it ever came up that we would sell it. Selling it was one of the options of conveyance. That's number one. Second of all, if you're using what I said previously to support your argument about town hall, I think you misunderstood what I said. I said it's always dangerous to conjecture why people vote the way they do at town meeting, and also to think that it's some homogeneous body, that town meeting in 2019 is the same as 2018, is the same as 2017. Different people show up, they have different things they want to discuss. It failed. Whatever reasons it was, I think it's hard to determine the reasons, especially when the vote is four votes away.
Shy.
So it really, did it get defeated? Sure, that's factual. It didn't get overwhelmingly, unanimously it got defeated.
But we're also a little into action too.
But Mr. Chair just said that voting to sell it wasn't voted down. That's what conveyance is. The legal definition of conveyance is the legal process of transferring property from one owner to another. Conveyance is a fancy
Yes.
formal legal word for selling. So when you said the town never voted against selling it or giving us the right to sell it, that's sort of what conveyance is to transfer property.
According to the article, I can't believe I have to go through this. According to the article, who was town meeting asked to convey the parcel to?
Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. I was asking her, but thank you.
But it
Yes,
gives us
Board
the
of
right to
Selectmen.
convey.
No.
That's what the article was. It gave us the right to be able to convey.
It didn't give us the right to convey. Town meeting was asked to convey the property to the Board of Selectmen for the purposes of, and then there was a whole list of things. for the Board of
Conveyance.
Selectmen to do. You're still missing the nuance of the whole thing.
Heather,
That's what's really getting.
the
into it.
article was giving us the right to have the ability to convey as one of our options,
It authorizes the Board of Selectmen.
to be able to sell the parcels. True or false?
Don't.
True. No, it's true. You're being very condescending, and conveyance is to sell or transfer, and through town meeting 3 times, November 2016, this past May in 2019, the November before that in 2018, there were 3 land conveyance articles. They're in the slide here. Conveyance is to sell, to transfer. And so these articles were to give the selectmen the ability and the right to convey and/or sell those parcels.
Or lease.
Correct, but all 3 times they said no.
But this third one,
I don't understand why that's even a debate. That's just what happened.
the 2017
You don't need to
article-
laugh at me. It's not
I'm
funny.
not laughing at you, I'm laughing at
When-
the,
when you
we're
look-
cross-talking here.
When you look at Article 11 from the 2017 town meeting, that's the moratorium vote. That wasn't the conveyance.
That's not the one
vote.
I'm talking about. That's a separate article.
But there's only 3.
That was my citizen petition. I know and love that one very well.
There's only 3 here. There aren't 4.
Then there's one missing. There was November 2016 at special town meeting, there's a land conveyance article for all the parcels together. That's when Chairman Alonso and Paula Bertram made an amendment to go out for RFP but not convey. Then it came back that following spring, in 2017, where they were separated into individual articles. After a couple of them failed, we passed over the rest of them because we were going building by building. And then it was this past town meeting, and I might be off on a date or a year because I'm jumping around, but there was 3 separate land conveyance articles that originated from the selectmen to seek conveyance. The last one obviously was last spring. The Article 11 was just a project that I worked on as a citizen to do a moratorium on land sales, mostly to bring awareness to the topic of land conveyance. I submitted that article. And that's not one of the 3 I'm speaking of.
So my point being that if you can transfer the custody to the Board of Selectmen for the purposes of sale or lease, you can't say that town meeting denied the sale of it, because there was no such sale even proposed. They denied transferring the property to the Board of Selectmen. That's what they denied. The subclause of what the Board of Selectmen had to do with it may have been, it obviously was subject of the
I see what you're
discussion.
saying.
What?
I see what you're saying.
No, there's a nuance here, but the chair had said that the town never voted against selling. They voted against transferring conveyance to the selectmen, for which they were working on selling. It's all the building reuse that the plan was to convey. And that's threaded in here. So I'm not wrong, and I don't think I need to be laughed at. I've worked on this for a very long time. All the data's locked in my head, and each time it went to conveyance, the town meeting body, although different, and although the reasons were different, the factual information is that the conveyance articles failed 3 times.
So
That's
what-
just
I
fact.
agree
It's
with
not
that
funny.
statement. That was the time you got it exactly right that I could agree with. The conveyance to the Board of Selectmen, the transfer to the custody of the Board of Selectmen for the purposes of conveyance were defeated.
And
I agree
conveyance
with
is
that.
to transfer or sell.
What were the 3 dates? Because we only have
All
one
right,
at
all right,
town meeting.
don't even worry about
But
that.
I think-
Please,
Yeah,
please.
but I see what you're saying, which is, I think that the hardship, though, is that the format of town meeting is, it's 10 people speak for about 6 hours total.
Yeah.
And, nothing to take away from the valuable contribution that people make to town meeting, but most people don't say a word. And so we really don't know the reasons
My point.
why a
My
lot of
point.
the people vote the way they vote.
Right.
Because you don't really know. I mean,
So I'm not going to put on something or not put on something because of what I think they may vote or not vote on.
'Cause some people are
Unless
like,
it was
"What's the
so
plan?"
obviously defeating
Yeah.
that, one person voted for it, and I'd be like, you know what, to introduce anything similar would make sense. But I'm also not looking at this part of, I see this process of this goal as a funnel. You get a lot of stuff, then you narrow it down as you go, but you can't dismiss it out of turn in the beginning. So to say that I won't discuss senior housing because I don't believe that we should convey it is already eliminating a choice right out of the chute.
Well, action 2 is eliminating some choices.
Thank you.
As we move to action 2, I mean, my question is, so far we have senior housing, town hall, school site, town green, and parking lot. And so if we don't add anything else to this list, it's gonna end up being one of these things, is what we're gonna funnel down to. So are there any other ideas that we have? I need to step away from this.
So we can demolish the building, keep the land. We can demolish the building, sell the land. We could lease the building for renovation to somebody. We could lease the building alone, or lease the building and the land. One of the things with the senior housing that we did in 2008, 9, up to I think 12 or 13, was that the town would lease the senior housing, the property for, I don't know how many years we were talking about. Is either 50 or 99, one of those two, that we said that's what we would lease it for. So that's, again, an option to at least talk about. Do I think that the town should be in the quote, business, unquote, of promoting senior housing? Yeah, I think it's one thing we should be looking at, like we look at a lot of things. We have an aging population, and I think in 5 years, a third of our population is going to be considered seniors and over the age of 60, something like that. So, do I think that we'll have somebody to do it? I don't know. I mean, obviously, financial conditions are a whole lot better now than they were in 2009.
How long will they last?
You know what? Spin the
We're
roulette.
inviting the bubble. Don't do it.
Spin the roulette with it, I guess, who knows? Now, the only thing is renovating if the building is renovatable, does the town renovate it? That's when we get our cost. Do we seek RFPs? RFPs require that, again, the town board of selectmen be able to offer that if that comes back. So, that has its own issues. For town hall, I think that the 7 million, I think, is probably an accurate estimate, without seeing any further design, of course.
I think we can cross off school site, because even though we've discussed this, I think it's clear schools aren't asking for another school right now, so I don't think that we should even pursue that.
Yeah, and a 2-acre parcel
It's not a lot.
would be really tough to put a school.
I'm interested in learning more because it was a TAPE option, and Michael's option of potential town hall, because we could get a larger town hall, add on, put things under one roof, create some green space and parking. So there might be like a trifecta there.
Okay?
We know we need to do something about town offices someday, and if we can create a space where we're meeting a lot of needs, and I see it as something that could add to that vibrancy of town center that's created through those farmers markets and stuff to constantly promote the usage of municipal land in town center. If we sacrifice municipal presence in town center, we sacrifice the future of that more than a market concept.
Okay.
I have a question, and it's related to this, but as the building committee that was just stood up explores the TCP, is it within their purview, I guess, broadly, to consider, not that I'm advocating for this, but to consider turning the TCP into like a senior housing center? Is that within the realm of what they can explore?
That's not how it was presented at town meeting. It was presented that we went through the conceptual design phase, had 3 options. The study was based on concept 1, which would be school, town, and community.
Right, no
And the result was
residents, no
community.
Yeah,
residences.
and that's how it was
Got it.
voted
Got it.
as well.
Okay.
And I think, yeah, I mean, unless it was a shared purpose, then I don't see how you share residences with, I mean,
No, of course
maybe if
not.
you live in Brooklyn or Queens and you share residences with businesses all the time,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
not very common here, so.
So town green and parking lot.
Yeah, so I have a town green and park separate from a parking lot, so we have a public parking lot. Town green / park.
For parking lot, do you anticipate 2.5 acres of asphalt, or would you consider having green space as part of your
No, I think
parking
it's,
concept?
I kept that as a separate thing, even though some of these can.
No, I'm just asking if.
No,
the-
no,
'cause
it
I-
wouldn't be 2.5 acres of parking. I would,
God, I hope
I would
not.
imagine that it would be a significant
As long as
parking
we'll have
lot,
to-
but also plenty of greenery, you know, it's impervious surface, you want to add as many trees as possible.
Yeah, I'd start thinking, I'd think
Yeah.
we're paving
2.5
paradise
acres
and
of-
putting up a parking lot is a little too
I
much.
have to break out your Joni Mitchell records at that point.
Yeah.
Sorry for all the young people watching.
I don't think there are too many.
Google it.
But if we let Unitil have their way, we'll also take all the trees and put them in a tree museum, and charge people $1.50 to see them, right?
Speaking of that, museum, that's actually a great idea.
Well, we do have one on that campus, a historical
Yeah,
society.
historical society.
So it's all part of that, yeah.
Maybe a historical society expansion.
Well, that's not a town.
They're private.
Yeah,
Right.
That's right, exactly.
But if we create that concept of parking lot, green space, it does complement
Yeah, let them know.
and highlight them, which is nice.
All right. Did Selectman McQuaid offer anything?
He did not in advance.
He's a pretty busy guy.
I saw some of his photos.
We'll skip over 2 for a second, because I want to, for action 2, means that we'll boil it down to a whole bunch of things that we'll look over, but we should start planning on, you know, and I know we've done it before in the past, but it's part of our goal, and I think getting renewed input from the public is good, so we should start planning how, and, you know, our sessions with other boards, commissions, and the public involved. Once we get it down to a series of things. So the list of action number 2 is at least 1, but no more than 4, so that, because 4 just would cloud the whole thing. So it looks like we almost only have 4. The town green, we said, what, Mrs. Adams, you said it would be, you're estimating $250K for the demolition and hazardous waste removal, right?
Yes. Well, that's from the TAP A. I think it might have been 256 or something, 265. You know, it was in that $250,000 range.
Okay.
And the interesting thing there, because the TAP A had the hazardous waste removal in 2015 at $98,000, is that figure, basically $100,000, applies to every outcome. And so when you look at the demolition, I would say that we could also talk about it just as a $150,000 demolition amount, because no matter what we do, we have to appoint $100,000 to remove the hazardous waste. So that figure applies to every outcome: parking lot, park, senior housing. And so the demolition is at the bargain basement price of $150K, if you consider removing the $98,000 of hazardous waste removal, from the fact that that applies to every outcome.
Except if we got a third party to renovate the building, then they would do it. So that's the only one that wouldn't, but yes, your point taken. Mr. Jeffries, how much did you estimate in your,
I
for
estimated,
parking?
yeah, I
If you were to repave that?
My math comes to 500. So I assumed 250 for the demo, I assumed 150 for engineering, regrading, plant materials.
Okay, hold on a second, hold on. What, 150K for site work?
for site work, and then 100 for the asphalt.
But these are just
these are
I mean, we're
rough.
just I don't want to make this like formal, because it's not from Tepe or Vertex.
No, I mean, recently I'm doing an asphalt project, separately, it's a lot more money. It's like $675,000 asphalt project. But, I'm trying to do comparing how much land is here to that project and saying, well,
Okay.
And Phyllis, just to your question, I looked through the articles. The one that's not in here is from November 28th, 2016. It was a special town meeting, and at that one, there was a variety of it was one article at that time, I think.
No, I think there were more than one at that meeting.
That was one where it was clumped, and then they broke it.
no, we didn't talk about commercial space over there, but I remember there being some concepts from the building reuse committee about commercial ideas in that area. Is that something that we want to throw in here?
Well, again, that's what I was, right, that's what I started out at the beginning, anything. We just want to throw anything out there that's possible.
We have 4, so I'm sitting here thinking.
We don't have to stop it at 4. This today is to get a list. We'll narrow it down. It'll clearly be narrowed down as we focus on that list, and we'll go over each thing about what each member's pros and cons are of each.
Small business zone,
In what way? Like,
and having that area as a small business zone, turning the building, kind of like what we were talking about with what we'll do with Town Hall. If we leave this building as having a space for artists, having a space for small businesses.
so the reuse of the current building as small business,
Correct.
not leveling it and have somebody rebuild it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, reusing as a business kind of zone, market or something. And again, I think we have to refer back to the town hall estimate and say that that's probably we assume it's gonna be less than $7 million, but not by too much, so let's assume 6.
So if you made it a commercial business zone, the town would be the landlord?
Well, I think there's options, either, I don't think the town should do things that business does better,
Right, I agree.
so.
I don't think we should be a landlord any longer than we
No.
have to be.
But I think that, that may be something worth exploring, the people who own, many strips, malls, not saying that would be a strip mall, but who rehab this kind of stuff, that may be, that may be something that has no cost.
Could be a
to it.
professional building.
Yeah,
Here's a question to this board. Would they prefer senior housing or a professional building?
senior housing.
And so do we want to open up that can of worms where we see a bigger need, or obviously everybody knows where I stand, but if it did have to go in a private direction, I'd rather see something like a little bit of senior housing than commercial development, because I think the way we're zoned as village district, all of the properties, including the storefronts we already have, but really individual homes, can be used and renovated, like 3 Lancaster, the Dragonfly. We've set up this center so that it can support commercial development. So my argument would be, if somebody really wanted to be here in the center, being commercial, the opportunity exists if they so desire.
Well, I'd say it's limited. I mean, we have one person that owns this whole thing across the street.
Any residential house could be adapted into commercial use, though. So anytime a house goes for sale in the center, a commercial developer could buy it, and using the village district bylaws, could be running a commercial operation in the center of town and be another landlord, that option's there. Because 3 Lancaster's just a house that's been converted into commercial use. So I guess instead of casting the wide net and creating more confusion, I would just say if we have a private outcome, we should stand behind senior housing or commercial development, because that building can't be both.
Right, but I mean, if it's going to be private, we're going to be limited to what people respond to, whatever we ask it to. We can limit in the RFP what we want it to be asked to, but it'd be nice if we could just target and say we only want it to be senior housing, but if nobody responds to it for senior housing, then you're nowhere.
I think we've been general so many times that if we don't get specific, then people won't be able to stand behind it. That's my concern.
But
Excuse me for a second, we've never gone out for an RFP on any of these buildings, right? Chris?
We did do an RFP back in 2017.
For all of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And did we get any responses to
No,
that?
we received no responses at that time.
There's a lot of good, viable property out there right now. And, we're not land crunched unless you're in the greater Boston area. So there's no, and there's a lot of towns around here that have large parcels that they're trying to develop for the purpose of money, of getting more money. And 2 acres is not competitive.
But this project, like Mrs. Luck is saying, in Leominster, I don't know the particulars, I don't know the building. There's reasons why developers like to do them.
Yeah.
I mean, so
There are.
I'm sure it involves making money.
Certainly.
So-
I'm not being negative, Nancy. I guess what I'm really saying is that I think we should say, instead of having senior housing and professional buildings separate, that we should have them as one, of senior housing or professional building, because it's really going to be the market that determines.
That's what I'm saying.
which one.
Right, you
that's
can't,
what
there's
Tom
no
said.
mixed use,
Yeah.
right, you have to choose one, but we could say, we're looking for RFPs specifically for these 2 purposes. I mean, because we're in the Senate, is that building in the Village Center District?
Yes.
So we're limited, what kind of businesses could go there, but I mean, professional businesses, accountants, lawyers, anybody who could potentially have a home office,
Yeah.
basically could do the work there. And that you could get a certain amount of suites or something.
Because there's money in, you fix a building once and you sell off each
Right.
room, you have condos, you make a lot of money off of that. If you're renting, you don't make as much money off of it.
Professional buildings are good because they don't take a lot of town services, and if they're just, people are there during the day, they don't take a lot of, they don't send kids to people to school, and they don't, if it's not like a Walmart or a retail area, they don't require a big public safety
crime.
presence, right, so.
I mean, how many classrooms are in there? I think like 6 in a gymnasium. It's not a big building.
Right.
So when we talk about things, we got to rein it in terms of the square footage and the split level. When you go downstairs on the front end of it, you have the furnace basement. I know everything could be renovated, added on, and changed, but downstairs, there's 2 classrooms and a gymnasium. The gymnasium is wood floor over dirt. So, I mean, look, that's part of the upgrade. But then upstairs, I think there's just 4 large classrooms. It's really, a lot of these things we're talking about, I'm thinking of these like mill buildings when I lived in Plymouth, where there was sprawling hallways, and
Right.
I had this cool doctor's office inside a mill building. We're not dealing with a lot of
No,
space here, so I
no.
think we're daydreaming beyond the potential of the building.
Yeah, but on 2.5 acres, if someone was building senior housing, they could expand.
With the needs for parking on 2.5 acres, there's not a lot of potential for a large expansion without a parking garage.
Yeah, they're not denying that it's locked and it has incredible grade.
Especially with the School Street changes. Those weren't there when a lot of these original things were talked about. School Street now is very well defined, and the way the frontage lays out and plays into offsets and stuff probably confounds the situation even more.
So I guess I shouldn't suggest an airport.
Heliport.
Oh, yeah.
If it was on a green, yes. I'd make a motion.
Another giant cell tower.
Only if we radiated it right at the high school in the zone that could potentially be dangerous.
Pretty sure
Oh, wait, we already did that. Sorry, that's bad. I
But
fought
I
that.
did vote for that, by the way.
All right, so we have, well, we don't have applicable costs or for the senior housing, because those, anything that's private, so the small business idea or the senior housing that would require conveyance, we don't really have numbers for, because we would just presumably go out for RFPs on that.
So 0.
And then the other, I have 3, but it's really 2, so the town park and parking lot, or the town hall conversion. Does the town hall conversion, that doesn't include the parking lot either, right? I don't think so.
I don't know.
Does in the map.
Did it?
I thought it did.
Okay, so then, all right, so it's the whole thing. All right, so the 7 million includes everything.
Would anybody mind if I do a little bit of research on whether or not in-kind donations would exist and how people would feel about that option?
I'm always for in-kind donations.
Yeah, again, we just have to be careful because if, with prevailing wage, depending on how the project's done, so. but no, I mean, on its face, I have nothing against you researching.
So, Mr. Chair, what other objectives are we trying to accomplish tonight?
This was the big one. And maybe we should talk about, at least in a broad sense of scheduling, you know, if we're gonna look at having open sessions, when would we be thinking about having those? Not that, you know, that could probably be the last topic tonight, just in general sense. I mean, if we work backwards, when do we have to have town meeting?
The article in?
Yeah, the article has to be done by what? Beginning of
March,
April?
So March is.
Mid-March?
Yeah, it's when the
Mid-March, okay, so we have to have it done by mid-March. So that gives us November, December, January, February, 4.5 months.
So all our hearings should really be wrapped up by February, for the most part, mid-February, right?
Well, we should, right, so we should come up with a determination ourselves, so which means we should have a workshop sometime in November, that we boil it down, and then we have, then nothing's gonna happen in December. So right in the beginning of like January, first few weeks in January, we have a public session, maybe another one the beginning of February, and then we boil everything down by the middle of March and come up with something.
Mr. Chair, one problem with this is I think preserving this as a potential outcome for town hall is totally in conflict to have a warrant article before we're done with the determination with the TCP Building Committee. We have to know the outcome of that. There's like two separate things with town hall potential. Like if it's determined that TCP is not going to be funded, or the town does not want to put town hall on school campus, et cetera, and it doesn't head in that direction, and this is a possible direction, how do we have an article to promote, say, a municipal town campus utilizing this as town hall when we're in the middle of looking at other parcels?
Well, that'll come into the discussion, I think.
But it's not a foregone conclusion, though, that the town is going to support whatever they come up with for
Well,
TCP.
Right, so making an actual article, I feel like we might not be there yet, because they're in the middle of trying to come up with something, and we don't know the result. So if we make like let's fund 7 million for town hall, we're doing 2 town hall projects at once, potentially. If we're there, the chairman's talking about creating articles to support these outcomes for annual town meeting in the spring, and with something else ongoing and we don't know the outcome, I don't know. I mean, I guess as a municipality, it would be fine. The history of the Jones House, it was originally down by the town common, and it was built as a school. And there's a brick school building that's still there, that's having a tree removed, I believe. I forget if it was a dangerous tree, but it was on our walk. So there's a brick house. And the town built those schools at the same time because they were in dispute over some topic. So they finished 2 schools and then sold the Jones House to, I forget who at the time, and that person moved it. So I guess we could potentially work on 2 things at the same time. It's been done before, but I don't understand it.
Well, again, we're jumping to a conclusion that we're gonna come up with a town hall article. We're not even 1.5 meetings into this. I just want it to be available. Those will be things to discuss, I think, to say, hey, if we go down to the thing like that looks the most viable, I think then what you're saying is right. I'm not saying we spend a lot of resources and everything looking at that. Let's discuss it. If it looks like that's likely, then yeah, maybe we would put the brakes on it. We say, listen, we're gonna see what the outcome of that is first. We may discard it and go to one of the other options anyway.
So-
Or we could present both. I mean,
Well, both is gonna be confusing.
it's going to be.
Yeah.
Well, no, but it's interesting.
Yes to this.
Yes, I mean, I think giving options could be something where we get on the same page and say, okay, this comes in at 11 million, this comes in at 7, here's the benefits of this and the benefits of that. I think heading down a choice path might work, but it would take a lot of communication. But I think the main point I'm making is that if we don't know the outcome of that, we cannot convey that piece of land because it could be the answer to some of our town needs. And that's why I don't think we should be talking conveyance options until we fully understand the town office outcome. I think that has to happen, and then we look at what's left over, and we know what to convey. So I just don't think I want to see us making any conveyance articles at this point, because we have too many irons in the fire on the topic that if we do one thing, we run out of the ability to use it for something else. So in terms of making an article and meeting our goal, I would love to see something like fund the hazardous waste removal. $100,000, because then we get the hazardous waste off the site. So what I encourage us to do is focus on attainable things that help the outcomes without getting locked into the same conversations we've had at these other articles that have involved conveyance. Look for something that we can do to improve. We could add parking to that site right now and have a better municipal parking on the front end where we have eased land to the Historical Society. So we could have an article where we upgrade the parking lot, add lighting, and remove the hazardous waste from the building and take a step forward. I would rather focus on small obtainable things. Goals are usually easier to achieve if you have something specific you're working on. I feel like tonight's meeting set us into this vague space we've been in the whole time.
I think there's options though, I mean, we have there's gonna be a lot more process here for this. And I think if we get to the point where we find that the best option, for example, is senior housing or professional building, if that's where we narrow this down to, I would think that the town, if the town has an option, and this is how I think, if I had an option between renovating one building for $7 million or whatever it is, and having another town building where we spend no money, but now is going to generate tax revenue to help pay for the cost that we just spent on this building, that I think is a different argument, and that's a different conversation. And I'm not saying that we're going to go that way, but with that, then if we are then conveyed with the ability, if we're given the authority to convey that land, then we could get better bids and be realistic about if there is a professional interest in that property. And then after a year or so, we can come back and say, look, there's no professional interest here. And so the next best thing on the list was this.
Everything you've just described already happened, because in 2016, the conveyance article was this cooperative, pay for this to fund that concept. So that existed back in 2016 at the special town meeting. And then it did go out to RFP and nobody did respond. So a lot of the things truly that you just described are already part of the story of this property.
Yeah, and I understand.
So I just don't want to relive it.
Markets shift and things change. Just because something wasn't viable 3 years ago doesn't mean it's not going to be viable today.
I see our true role here as a municipal protector of Lunenburg, and I want to see the outcome of a town office and an overall use of municipal land. Like, I just don't think our band concert space will meet our future needs. I think that's a municipal need. I think we're looking for commercial needs, developer needs. They can have at it with all the commercial land. We only have tiny parcels of municipal land left for Lunenburg. And I don't understand why we don't focus on those. I'll never understand it.
Well, luckily the town owns 10% of the town, roughly?
That's in conservation. I'm talking about the vibrancy of town center from a municipal perspective. That's conservation land that's near and far. That 10% figure has nothing to do with town center.
So, we have options, though, I guess is what I'm saying, with greens and, once you build a park, you never tear a park down. So, that's my only reservation with the park.
If the world says anything, is that things change no matter what you put there.
Yeah.
So don't worry. Who knows what the future brings when you put something somewhere. Again, my goal for this agenda item was to cast a broad net. We can start throwing things out after tonight. I don't want to start throwing things out tonight, so.
So what do we have so far?
We had, so on the private side, we had a small business building or a senior housing, which would need conveyance to look into and give us the ability to go out to RFPs for either of those.
Would a long-term lease also help work?
Well, that would be part of the.
Conveyance or?
Yeah, that would be part of the
Just like we already did. Sorry, I just feel like we're reliving the same nightmare. and
Well, you're
nothing-
certainly making us relive the same nightmare over and over, but thank you.
You've certainly been plenty rude enough tonight. You can show respect to the opposition.
It has nothing to do with respect, but we've heard it at least 4 times even tonight. So we understand your position. I am absolutely 100% positive that we all understand your position.
I'm actually mostly standing behind the position of articles that went through town meeting, which is our legislative body, so I guess we're making fun of them too.
I never make fun of town meeting.
I just want to clarify something too about the RFPs. I'm looking at all of them that were done in 2017. They were all contingent upon a town meeting vote.
Right, so we went out without the
went out,
conveyance, right?
right.
Which we've said, and people have told us that businesses won't take that risk. It's not worth them putting the time and effort to put something together when the decision by the town to offer them the land is not even available.
Engineering costs start at like 30,000, and so normally, you assume an engineer building that size, you're in it for $60,000 plus, and no one's gonna spend that kind of money unless it's actually a viable option.
So, the senior housing small business, those are the private ones. The public ones, we do a town hall conversion as per the TAPE. We do a town green/park, which would involve the demolition and hazardous waste removal, site work, and paving of the parking lot. So those are the 2 there. And if there's anything else that anybody wants to put on here, this is the time to add it. Beside direct sale, right? We could just sell the property and offer that. I don't think
I don't think any of
anybody's...
us are in favor of that.
Well, I mean, it is an option. I just put it out there, so.
I mean, do you want to add, I mean, is there, I don't read that we have support for that, though. So I don't know if we should waste our time.
Yeah, so.
I agree.
So those are the 4 we have. And then we can schedule, like I said, our next, we'll have to work on when the next workshop can be in November.
When we have a town meeting thrown in there too.
Yeah, so that's 9th, so the 26th, it would be the last Tuesday, right?
Which is, the Tuesday
Oh,
before
which we can't-
Thanksgiving.
Which we can't do, because we can do. I wouldn't be here.
No,
because
thank
I'm
you.
away. So maybe the first week in December, maybe we try to do that.
The workshop then?
Do the workshop then.
Okay.
Just to get it,
Yeah.
just to get our thoughts boiled down, and then we can start planning, because we have to plan well in advance, the
Can we
public
consider,
comment part.
now adding in, doing every Tuesday of the month? I'm not saying December, but I think it's gonna be necessary in January and February for sure, to plan to be here every day, every Tuesday, and not skip the last one.
It's nice hearing somebody offer that, because I never understood. It happened, the 4th week off happened after I left, because I never was for it.
I'm for it.
Like, before the last week off, but yeah, you're proposing it.
Summertime, during the summertime, but
Well, I'm approaching 3 meetings a week now, night meetings,
Yeah, I support keeping it as is for now, and
yeah, for now.
But I agree that,
January, February.
I agree.
Between now and the end of the year with all the holidays, it really almost doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense anyway.
But I agree, January, February, and March. This is a lot to do before town meeting and budget season.
It seems to make sense, and then
Can these
summertime.
be summarized, just
Lay it
in
up a little
basic
bit.
blocks? Or do you want me to do
for when? 'Cause I have-
that? Between now and the next meeting, our next workshop.
You know what, maybe try to have Elaine do these minutes first, and then you sort of have it boiled down.
That's fine. I mean, if she can get these minutes done before our next workshop.
I can talk to her about that, yeah.
Anything else?
What's that?
I was just thinking,
Yeah,
as far
that's
as input from, I know special town meeting, you're seeking input as far as, as where people stand on demolition. What about a survey? We've never done a survey on options.
Well, once we
So-
have options, we can do that, sure.
Right, so are these viable options? It will give us some statistics, and part of the questions could be, do you attend town meeting? So we can get a gauge of where people, because you're getting a temperature reading of the people you'll be going to ask for them to vote on it.
Sure.
I have trouble with the surveys because there's just no way to collect the population or know who gets a survey unless we do a direct mailing and have a way to directly receive everything back. I know on like Survey Monkeys, one time I took the same one like 12 times just to show I could. So my background in pharmacy, there's so much with clinical trials and what is good data. And these generic surveys, they just confound the situation and keep us spinning our wheels because
Did you take them from the same computer? 'Cause usually it tells you can't.
we don't know if that's going to translate to town meeting. That's why I like what we've set up with the article to see how people feel about demolition, is it's the actual body that would vote to fund or not fund, and everything's going to come down to whether or not it makes it through a town meeting vote, even if a bunch of people weigh in. I want to focus on the things that are going to get something accomplished.
I want to add on to what you're saying. And if we were to do a survey at town meeting as like an additional written paper, because now we know for sure that we're hitting the population who actually participates in town meeting, that may be the best way to get a read of what and so the article that we have is about demolition, which we'll get a clear answer on that. But if there was a secondary survey with just some of these ideas out there, which ones they support or could support, and almost like a ranked choice on it, because that way you get a kind of better idea. That to me is a better data from the body that we know, who will potentially, it's fair to say everyone who showed up in November showed up in May. So, right? I mean,
I like that idea.
That's reasonable.
Legally, can we do surveying and stuff? Like what's our, without putting things in the warrant and this or that? I'm just asking.
Oh, yeah, we can have a table outside that they could take,
Just the
hard
legal
copy,
requirements.
and then would have a URL for, if they wanted to do it online.
Well, I think we keep it, with Michael's idea, it's kind of interesting, just keep it, just a paper one that day. Just have people fill it out and just slip it in.
Return it then,
Yep.
that night?
Yep. Just have a box and just have people fold it, slip it in.
And have it be a different color than everything else.
I'm concerned a little bit about whether or not this is okay to collect at town meeting without having it be a legal part of the process. I mean, every town meeting's set up the same with the rules and whatnot, so
It's not part of
let's
town meeting,
say,
it's happening at town.
let's say the town meeting body, 53% say they want it senior housing. Well, why not have just had that as what we did, which is to create an actual article to ask?
I think that the difference is that we were pushing for the idea of demolition, because if the town's not in favor of demoing this building, that knocks out town green, that knocks out parking lot. And so that hones us in then to very limited options of what we can do there. And that's why I think it's so necessary to have that as a vote at town meeting, which I know was, not all of us agreed with. But the survey, I would group it more like the bake sale that goes on outside. Like it's something that doesn't.
Yeah, it's not
really-
part of the town meeting, it's just
part of
happening
it.
at town meeting. And the reason you do it is because you can get a lot more choices, and it doesn't take anybody's time, it just,
If you
people
want
fill
to
it out,
participate,
and it's,
participate. If you don't, you don't.
right,
But that's the population that hit that day.
yeah.
It's a very small sampling, but it is people who go to town meeting.
But it's real people, and, I mean,
Yeah.
presumably, people could
Hopefully.
fill it out more than once again, if they
Yeah, right,
so
right.
chose, but I mean,
But we
all
have-
surveys,
Probably not a lot of
all
people.
surveys have a problem like that.
Well, I was saying, we have no data, and I agree on this. When we do online, I'm not on Facebook, so I don't, and I'm not, I have, but I don't really, I don't even see these things.
Right.
And we don't know the correlation between the people who fill out a survey online versus the people who show up at town meeting. So that's always the struggle here. But
Some
if we
online
get the
surveys,
data-
must have a way, because I've forgotten that I filled out a survey and gone to fill it out again, and they say, you already
Yeah.
filled this out.
Yeah, if you do it from the same computer, but if you have a phone and you have a computer and you have a tablet, then you can fill it out, because it's all gonna have different IP addresses, that's how
Yeah,
they do
and
it.
you go to work and there's
Right.
I
laptops.
mean, how many people?
No, it's just
Fair
the
enough.
point
You
that.
just asked the technical question
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
wrong person.
It's
I'm giving
just
you
the point
technical
that the
answer.
data's not
But
clean.
I mean,
That's-
if it's,
It's just not clean
How
data.
many people
That's-
do that? Most people don't fill out the first survey once, forget about 3 times.
I think the point is that it's not clean data.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I
all
don't think
surveys-
it's very
All
hazardous.
surveys by their very nature are not clean, I mean, that's the problem.
I don't think
Well,
it's
you wanna-
highly hazardous that people are gonna fill it out 12 times.
Right.
Not many people.
The likelihood.
That's not my point. I didn't do it to change an outcome. I did it to show that it's not a good way to collect data, in my opinion.
I mean, aside from going on with a clipboard and asking everybody one by one and somebody noting it, you know, we're never gonna do that, so.
I'm just, my old life, I'm a giant nerd, and when you do a lot of data-driven things and studies and trials, you want very clean, precise information that's going to be accurate to your outcome. So if we're casting the wide net but in the wrong direction, we're gathering data, but it's not going to help us have a positive outcome at town meeting.
Well, if you're going that route, you could do an empirical analysis to say, you know, it has this percentage of deviation from would be an accurate result.
I don't think we need to get into that. I'm just saying focusing on the legislative body is what's going to create a good outcome.
So you're in support of this paper survey outside that people can choose to participate in or not at town meeting?
I guess it depends on seeing the survey ahead of time, making it together, and seeing what we're trying to gather, because you can sell people on an outcome.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
do you
sure.
want to have a fountain that you can collect, you know, gold coins from? Yes. You know, but we could be saying, do you want to see senior housing? And that sounds very appealing, but the viability might be very low, because we don't have a developer, we don't have a plan. So I get concerned about giving people options, and of course, senior housing in the center, having the old building all spruced up, it sounds amazing, check. But we don't necessarily, we need to present the viability of it. And I would only support a survey if it says, you know, something like senior housing. However, here's the history, here's the data, we have
No, I think you're shifting that.
No, but I mean,
Now we're selling.
no, but I'm just saying, if we're collecting information, I want to collect it on reality, not on daydreams or hypotheticals.
But I think that our process is to determine viability, and I think that what we can try to get is just what.
Are people interested?
Yeah.
Are people
No, but it doesn't matter if the public's interested in senior housing. It matters if there's a developer or person to make the senior housing. And so without being able to present that piece of it, asking people if they want it when we can't deliver it, I would rather focus on an outcome we can do.
But if we get like 80% of the people that say no way to commercial options, senior housing, to professional building, then I think that we very well don't go to town meeting with any conveyance article in the spring, because there's no reason to do that.
Surveys like that are meant to inform, to
Yeah.
advise, not to dictate. They're not going to dictate what we do because of all the other elements that we can't possibly put on a survey. If we put on a survey, we filled out one full page for every one of these four things, you would get zero response. Well, no, you'd get 12 responses, because everybody would be an elected or an appointed official.
I guess I'm too simplistic, but you said what you wanted to see. If people said no way to conveyance, then we'd know no, but we've already heard it 3 times. So you said if we had a survey and the result was no conveyance, then we'd know something. I know that. We've done it 3 times and it has come out no. So to do a survey to see if people want to convey it, oh my
I don't think
goodness.
that would be the point, but I mean, I guess I disagree that 65% of people voting for something is 65% of people voting for something.
Well, is there anything on here that we haven't had some kind of town meeting article about?
No.
Right. Because 2 of them involve conveyance. One of them is just demolishing the building and putting a park. We've had an article about that. We haven't had one about town hall conversion.
Yeah, town hall.
That's the only one we haven't had.
Yep.
That would be really interesting and at this point, we don't have the funding to do it because we have funded the study of that space. So we don't have an article that funds the study other than the TAPE and the loose data we already have. It would be great to have a couple of options and say we need new town offices and provide options, because then you don't get you might get no on both, but I don't know.
Well, they have their own process, but I would, for that meeting, but I would suggest that when we do this survey, that we can certainly put a disclaimer that, you know, not all these are actually viable options, or we have no idea, we don't have determination of the viability of any of these options.
Yeah,
We can make a
that's
statement
fine to
like that.
determine public interest.
But in just saying, you know, if you could pick if you could decide on what was going to happen to the old Ritter building, you know, what are the top 3 options that you'd pick? The old primary.
right?
Yeah, what are your top 3 options? What are your top 3 options, right? And I think that from that, we can get some better data on, you know, and it doesn't mean that it's all viable or that's going to happen.
If somebody wants to work on the questionnaire,
I can-
survey, then do it.
Yeah, I'll work on it, because I think it's going to be really simple.
I like the open-ended, and then we could compile the results and have like a bar graph. So if it just said, what are you, your top two, do you see as the future use as the land and site, and people could write it and then submit that, I think it would be lovely, because you're almost, what I'm saying with the survey is based on what you put on the survey, you are directing the outcome. So I like something open-ended, but simple, so it's really easy to compile into like an Excel spreadsheet and say, hey, this is some input that we got.
But we've agreed to a process,
If you
though.
make people think too much, they're not going to participate, so that's the other flip side. I mean, the best thing is everybody wrote an essay about what they wanted to do there. You get full details about what people are visioning, and I'm not saying that to be flippant, I'm just saying that would be the most information you could get, but people wouldn't do it. So you have to come up with
And you
something
can also
that makes it easy.
you can also taint the pool by one person verbally saying something, and if they don't have other options out there, then that's all, so it's kind of hard to get your mind off of it.
Well, plus
you know?
you also have to interpret what they write.
But I'll work on the survey.
I think a little ticket that just said,
Great.
what would you like to do with the primary building, and let it be filled in, and
I
then
think that's too
compile
hard
it.
to,
That leaves people giving a chance to have their
You could
opinions,
put a
we wouldn't
note at
want
the bottom of
that.
the survey saying, if you have a vision you want
Any
to
other
share,
idea?
here, share it with us.
yeah, that's good.
We can put that on the same thing, it's not mutually exclusive.
Yeah. Any other
You're also
idea?
trying to narrow down your options.
Right.
Yeah,
Right?
we're not trying to
So,
make-
to help
add
move
more.
that process forward, it would be good input.
And if it's wording or something that people are concerned about, then please participate, help make the survey. I think it's a good idea. We have an audience that are going to be there, like Mr. Jeffrey said, I think these are people who are going to participate, or more than likely will participate in most town meetings. Are there people who come and then don't come? Sure, but for the most part,
There's
they
a
come.
core
So this is the audience presumably you'd want to hear from.
When you look out, you see a lot of the same faces.
All right.
Perfect. Now, one thing I don't understand is, having open sessions with other boards, committees, and commissions. Do we invite them here? Do we go to their meetings? How does that work? Do you envision it?
Yeah, no, we would invite an open meeting, not on our meeting, not their meeting, but just like an additional thing that we could go and, again, just have an open discussion.
Are you open to the idea of, instead of, because of the amount of meetings that we all go to, and for work, most of my meetings are at night as well, like yours, would it be better to send representatives instead of the whole body,
Yeah,
sitting two
I think we'll leave
people?
it up to them. I don't think we're gonna invite all boards and bodies. We're gonna invite a blanket.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is,
We could have one that's just for elected and appointed officials, and then we could have one for the public, or we could have everybody together. I don't have any predisposition.
You're right, suggesting that they send a representative that reflects, they talk about it and send a representative that reflects their views would probably be the kindest thing to do.
yeah,
So they
that
don't
would
feel
we ask the
compelled.
question to them and.
Well, it's like this symposium.
Yeah.
We can invite people, and, if people wanna come, they come.
Yeah.
Our goal is to make it accessible, and to have a discussion, to get the public's input on these things, so. And we can't have a million meetings, because no matter what you do, somebody will say, well, I can't do it on that day, I need another day. So we can do two of them reasonably. The third starts getting really tricky because of the
Right,
timing.
right.
And the overwhelming majority of town does not vocalize their views. So, it's really hard to know,
Right.
Where they're coming from. And that's the struggle with these open forums. Not that I'm opposed, I'm not, that you're only really hearing from people who aren't afraid of public speaking or feel so strongly about something that they're willing to overcome that fear of public
When we
speaking.
had a bunch of charrettes, there was the same people at every one.
Yeah.
Right.
You're capturing the extroverts for the most part.
Yes.
Or the introverts like me who struggle to be extrovert because it comes easy.
People with a particular interest in a particular opinion. Okay, that sounds good.
All right. Last but not least on the agenda, upcoming meeting and event schedule. So again, to reiterate for people who tuned in late, next Tuesday, there's no selectmen meeting, but there is an informational symposium at the Lunenburg Middle School, High School Auditorium that is going to be given by the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the School Committee. There'll be presentations by the Land Use Director, the Superintendent of Schools, and the Town Manager. People will be discussing the visions of the town and start a discussion about the budget season, both this year's and how it impacts potentially future budget seasons, so maybe a 3 or 5 year forecast. And of course, there is special town meeting on Tuesday, November 12th at 7 PM at the Lunenburg Middle School, High School Auditorium. Seems like we have a lot of events there. Thank God it's new and seats are comfortable.
Yes.
So, those are the latest. Any final public comment from the public? Seeing none. Any final public comment from the board? Hearing none. I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Good night, everyone, and see you at the symposium next Tuesday. Good night.